And so we will begin now if everyone's ready. So.
Yes, we're ready. Call the meeting to order, call the roll.
All right. Chair James Stevens.
Here.
Vice Chair Martin.
Here.
Secretary Fletcher.
Here.
Regent Bogard. Regent Cox. Regent Finan.
Here.
Regent Girdler. Regent Green.
Here.
Regent Hamilton.
Present.
Regent Herdink.
Here.
Regent Jackson.
Here.
Regent Rabinowitz. Regent Smith.
Here.
And Regent Whitten.
Present. I saw her, yeah.
We do have a quorum. We may proceed.
All right. Turn it over to you. To the part of the presentation. All present. All right. Ready?
We have to approve the minutes.
Oh, I had to prove the minutes of the last meeting. I'm sorry. I don't have my script. It's on the screen and just, yeah, I'm on.
Too far away.
Yeah, too far away. Do I hear any objection to the approval of the minutes of the last meeting?
I'll make a
Hearing
motion.
none, please raise your hand. For aye. See people's hand.
Are there any objections? Hearing none.
Hearing none, move approved. Next item on the agenda is the report, right?
So there is also the approval of the March 2nd.
Okay, well, I need a motion to approve the March 2nd minutes of the Huron meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion passes. I can't see that far.
Yes.
All
By
right.
consensus, they are approved.
Yes.
All right, we're ready to begin the Huron progress report.
Yes, ma'am.
We have our Huron project leaders here. So thank you very much for coming. And they do have a presentation that they would like to provide for the board. They're moving right along, and we're in almost daily contact. So I present to you our Huron project leads. Take it away.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen or put it in presentation mode and we can begin. All right. So this month's update for all of you as board members is going to be focused on the compensation and equity work stream. And we have actually conducted the current state analysis, and today is going to be focused on the result of our finding. So we did conduct both qualitative and quantitative analysis. If you remember, we have done multiple town hall meetings, as well as focus group interviews and one-on-one interviews. So we were able to aggregate and come up with 4 main categories with several themes that emerged, leading to both strengths and opportunities for KCTCS. So you will see that the first category is total rewards. So benefits and retirement were identified as primary strengths in the total rewards package, while base pay and supplemental pay, or that includes overload pay as well, were called out as areas of opportunity. So we certainly, specifically with the benefits and retirement, that consistently came across as employees were calling out the importance of the benefits and retirement, how competitive it is relative to local employers. So we certainly wanted to highlight that piece of it. And then the second part is when it comes to base pay, they felt like they weren't competing, especially with new hires, being able to recruit based off of the current pay structure that exists. So that is one opportunity when looking at total rewards. The second one is focused on salary administration. So the current compensation process enables colleges to use discretion on salary administration, leading to different pay practices between colleges. And the main reason is primarily due to the varying economic challenges. So to give you a specific example, one college may be bringing in new hires at the midpoint, while others are targeting the minimum of the pay range. So again, it might be the same type of position at different colleges, but different pay practices are being seen across the institution. And then when we get to the third theme, that's career progression. So respondents did stress the importance of having a career path. Now there's two different sides of the coin here. One for staff, where they recognize that there really isn't a form of career progression that takes place at KCTCS, meaning if they want to progress their career, they either have to leave the institution or take on a completely different job or go to a different college. On the other hand, faculty, they do have a faculty promotion process, but they define the process as very tedious and requiring very little or based off of this specific process, they felt like there was little compensation tied to the effort that went into going through that process. So that was the common theme when it comes to career progression. And then the fourth theme is around project outcomes. So individuals express their frustration at the lack of concrete outcomes from previous studies. And during the town halls, we've heard a lot about other studies done. And they felt that it didn't really come to fruition or didn't meet their expectation. The second part of that, though, is if there are possible costs associated with this initiative, some colleges felt like they didn't want to be burdened by that cost. So there were some ideas brought forward to possibly have central funding to be able to cover the costs. Again, these are potential costs that may come about from this engagement. So I'm going to pause right here and see if there's anything surprising or questions about the themes that are outlined on this slide.
Regent Herdink.
Can you explain what central funding means in this presentation?
Yeah, so specifically from the system office funding that would be provided to the colleges. That's how it was delivered, in the interviews. Any other questions before we move on to the quantitative piece?
Regent Green.
I think everything seems pretty spot on. And I think one of the most important things right now is that little box next to the project outcomes where it says, individuals express their frustration. So I think that's where people are right now. And the fact that we are discussing these things and bringing them to light, I think that's a big deal for people. So not really any surprises that I'm aware of. I'm glad to see the conversation about staff promotion and faculty promotion improvements and opportunities there.
There are no more questions. Let's move on to the quantitative piece of the current state analysis. So just to go over the method that we followed, the first one is for both faculty and staff, we used higher education salary surveys. So we are comparing against that specific industry and not general industry or the private sector. So that's one thing to note there. So for staff jobs, staff jobs were evaluated using the 50th percentile of the Coupa salary survey. So generally we would target the 50th percentile, and that would be considered market competitive or aligned to market. So that's why that percentage was selected. For faculty jobs, we evaluated those jobs using AAUP faculty compensation survey, which reports in average salaries. Now, market matches for staff jobs were limited to previously determined KCTCS KCTCS matches. So we actually looked at a sample size and not all staff positions, mostly because we looked at jobs that were benchmarked against the Coupa data for this preliminary analysis. Now, after the completion of this project, or during the project, I should say, we will be defining the jobs and the responsibilities aligned to those jobs, and we will be benchmarking not just what the current benchmarking is. So I will note that. So for that, we are approximately looking at 760 employees. So the data that's going to be presented here is based off of that evaluation. And then the following data cuts, I see we have a question from Regent Fletcher.
Yes, so I'm looking at this, and while realizing that 60% of all Kentuckians live on a border, it looks like that this Coupa data and the AAUP data is all more south and south central or southeastern. What about Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia? We have a lot of folks who are on those northern borders of the state. This looks like it's only looking at southern.
Yep, that is correct. So for this preliminary data, we wanted to include, because Kentucky falls under that east, south, central region, we wanted to look at that data cut. However, when looking at this, in more of a robust way, as part of this engagement, we are going to be defining who are we truly competing against. And we actually had a meeting with the advisory board yesterday, and they mentioned that same statement around including other neighboring states, like especially Ohio, and we will be including that. But for this preliminary analysis, we wanted to focus on how the survey vendors would define the region and present that data that way. So like Regent Fletcher pointed out, the next, tables that you see is really the data cut prioritization approach that we took. So for Coupa or staff jobs, we looked at the East, South, Central region, which includes Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And we're using whenever that regional data wasn't available, in most cases it was, we looked at the national data cut. For faculty, same data cut used, and there wasn't an alternative data cut needed because they all had matches that were appropriate. So you also see the effective date of those of the data there. Since then, we have received, or KCTCS has received, updated data for the new academic year, so we will be able to use that for the analysis going forward. So with that said, again, knowing that we are looking at a sample size, staff market alignment does vary by college, supporting the narrative provided by interviewees. So if you remember, one of the one of the themes that we saw was the different salary administration practices between colleges. And that's definitely reflected in the quantitative analysis here as well, where you look at Jefferson, for example, and the average market ratio is 102%. So that average ratio is the average salary at KCTCS divided by the 50th percentile for that given job. So the average, you could see the closer it is to 100%, that means it's more aligned to market at the 50th percentile. So Jefferson, you see, is at 102% versus, let's see, another college like Ashland at 85 or Maysville at 84%. You will see the number of incumbents tied to each college to the right, totaling the total sample size of 761. So the main call out here is overall average market ratio for staff jobs is 92% based off of current matches. But again, to keep in mind that this is preliminary and representing only 761 incumbents. By the end of this engagement, we would want to make sure that a lot more jobs are mapped or market matched, and employees are represented much larger than the scale that we see right now. Now, when we look at faculty, we are looking at AAUP data, and the way the survey provider shares their information is through average salaries. So what we found is faculty market alignment does vary by both rank and college. So overall, KCTCS faculty members are paid approximately 72% of the East South Central subregion average salaries. So you will see the colleges and divided by or broken out by rank. So professors at that 67% of the average market, the market average, and then 71% for associate professors, 70 for assistant, very similar. Instructors slightly higher than the other ranks at 83%. And I will call out here that the KCTCS salaries were converted to a standard academic year basis for this analysis. Questions?
I've got a quick question. It's Keith Hamilton. Is there any correlation between average numbers of salary and tuition at these individual colleges?
So we have not looked at those two specifically. The way the data is reported by the survey vendor, so AAUP specifically in this case, they don't attribute which institution actually is paying a certain amount. So there is some variations there. So we're not able to like drill down to that level, but perhaps there is some opportunities to be able to work with the other work streams and see if there's any correlation there, to your point.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure if tuition is lower at that college, i.e. the ability to pay staff was commensurate with that that dollar amount, but it seems like there's not a direct correlation. I was just curious. Thank you.
Sure.
All commissions same.
Regent Green?
Was there any breakdown or differentiation between like occupational, technical faculty versus gen ed and, health sciences, those types of things? Because I think those numbers can vary greatly, especially if you're looking at, faculty as a whole. And then also, we do have faculty rank, employees who are faculty rank that may be in different positions. They may be in administrative positions and they've kept their professor status. So were those things kind of looked at or taken into consideration?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And for this current state analysis, we wanted to be able to compare based on rank. But as part of the work that we are doing with this work stream, we are going to be looking at discipline, year in rank, and those different factors to be able to have a more robust recommendation. Even in the current pay structure at KCTCS, there are a total of 4 by rank. And one of our recommendation is, you'll see on the next slide, is really going to be focused on, because the external market differentiates these ranks by discipline, we want to make sure that the pay is correlated to that, or at least considers that. So to that point, that will be part of the work, but for this specific analysis, we focused on rank because of the current pay structure setup.
Regent Fletcher?
I wanted to make a comment back to Keith, and that is that I think I understood the question you were asking about tuition dollars coming in and then pay going out. But I do think, from my limited experience with this piece of it, we have some colleges that are quite old, have been around for many, many years, long before this was even part of the system, who probably still have some faculty members that were holdovers from when they were part of UK or when they were independent colleges that rolled into the system. And so I do think that you probably have some long-term faculty members who have been around for a very long time in some of the smaller, older schools where tuition probably doesn't really factor into what they're paid. It's their longevity and seniority that really factors in more. Was I correct in what you can shake your head yes or no, but am I on the right track?
Yeah, I was just trying to get. Yeah, I get it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Regent Green, did you have a follow-up? Yeah.
Okay. And this is the last slide here. And so we really wanted to highlight some of the market positioning opportunities that we found. So the first thing to note is 24% of staff employees in the analyzed sample, again, that's 761, are below market. And we're defining that as salaries less than 80% of the market 50th percentile. So there are opportunities that exist to evaluate the range placement of future state job profiles using market data. And that's going to be what we'll work towards in our final recommendation to all of you. For faculty members, we found that 72% of average salaries in that specific region of East, South, Central subregion, or members are paid at that 72%. And so there are opportunities that exist to align faculty members closer to market with the different factors, like I mentioned just earlier, that includes discipline, the years in rank, as well as performance. And then just other minor call outs, Coupa is KCTCS's only source of market data for staff jobs in the current state. So KCTCS does have an opportunity to leverage general industry surveys, not only to increase the quantity of matches and improve quality of data, but to expand beyond the higher education market for shared services jobs. So we know that institutions don't only compete with other higher education institutions for jobs like finance and HR, marketing, communication. So to have an opportunity to add another survey to expand the source of data is a recommendation. Also, what we found was not included in this presentation, but is that there's limited relationship currently based off of our high-level analysis that exists between years in position and market alignment. So KCTCS may address this by implementing consistent salary placement guidelines and leading practice rate structures. And so that is to say those who have been with the institution a long time are paid in a similar fashion as those that just entered that specific position. So we'll be able to explore more of that during this work stream and the work associated with that. And last is just opportunity also exists to have consistent midpoint progression and range spread. Broadly, though, this is really focused on the faculty pay structure. Like I mentioned earlier, currently has one grade or one band per rank, but being able to differentiate that based off of discipline will give KCTCS an opportunity to be more competitive in this faculty compensation space. So next steps, we are continuing our work within this work stream. We are currently finalizing the compensation philosophy, which we hope to share with all of you in the next board meeting. We presented that to the advisory committee, the Compensation and Equity Advisory Committee. We received great feedback and we'll be modifying that. We are also finalizing the job classification framework and drafting job profiles, which includes job responsibilities and high-level job summary for KCTCS based on the work that's actually performed at each of the colleges. We'll also begin to engage subject matter experts to validate the standard job profiles for KCTCS, and we'll continue to work with our workstream lead group, which we meet on a weekly basis to ensure that this program design aligns to the needs of all colleges. So the group is representative of both the system office and the colleges. So their input has been very valuable in this design of the compensation program. And last, we are continuing to identify opportunities in the other work streams like space utilization, academic programming, and financial spend and organizational structure. Any questions, last minute questions before we wrap up? Back to you, Pam.
All right. Well, thank you very much. again, I'm gonna give kudos to the team. They have been so responsive to any questions that we've posed of them, and quite patient. They have hopped onto calls when requested. So I think the board should feel comfortable that they have a really good handle on KCTCS and have been listening to our people, our employees, our students, our leadership. So thank you very much. And if you don't mind, I'd like to give everyone a round of applause for what you've done so far. So thank you. Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You have any comments?
No,
Huh?
I do not have any
Okay.
comments.
I asked Pam if she had any comments. I asked Pam earlier and just to make sure that all the information is reviewed and nothing is removed. If people are complaining about things or situations that all of it is being looked at and diagnosed and will be reported appropriately.
That's correct. And I will say that Huron understands the need for both transparency and also to be very careful with making promises, because we do need to communicate this. Regent Hamilton?
Yeah, quick question for the board. So once the study is complete, and I would assume some changes would be identified from, potentially some pay changes, would those changes or increases be from additional funding from the state for the colleges, or would those changes come from tuition increases? Or is it a hybrid of the two? I'm just curious.
So, I'm going to be very lawyerly here and say it depends. It's unlikely that it the state. So I will kind of swat that one down very quickly. I'm not sure that we can expect additional appropriations. So we would need to actually look internally to determine how to appropriately fund any changes that need to be made surrounding class and comp, surrounding anything else. So what the hope would be is that with efficiencies gained, there would be money that is generated from that. And then that money would go to fund the necessary changes in our class and comp.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just concerned about both, making sure people are adequately compensated for the hard work that they do, but simultaneously, we know that when tuitions go up, some of my most vulnerable population sort of bears the brunt of those changes. So I just was trying to get a sense for how that sort of works from a systematic
right standpoint. And tuition raises, are but I know that Buddy and his team have been looking at with the president, along with the president's, some possible ways to generate revenue without necessarily putting it on the backs of students, but also ensuring that certain tuition rate, tuition cuts actually that might be out there for surrounding or contiguous counties, other states, might be available to students as well, and that might be an opportunity to garner more enrollment.
Yes, that's another question.
Regent Vaughn has a question.
Thank you. Just a comment and then a question. The comment is, I mean, sometimes, and I think it's important for this board to understand, efficiencies can cost money versus saving money when you first go to implement and organize. And so I think that's really important for us to keep in mind as we look at whatever the findings are. We may not come up with the savings, but we may come up with efficiencies. So just wanted to put that out there. Pam, this is a question to you. What kind of lift has been required from staff at KCTCS related to this study? What type of support, man hours, woman hours, et cetera, has needed to be attached to this effort?
So I would say from my personal standpoint, it has taken a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I have had excellent support with Kate Thomas from my office and Holly Kellicott from the Chancellor's area. But in addition to that, I know that ORPA has gathered information and data, and there have been staff in Buddy's area that have had to provide data. So in all areas, people are coordinating data and supplying information and documents and all of the necessary information for Huron to do their job. So I cannot say that it has been a minor inconvenience. I know that Cindy Ackley worked extremely hard with Amy Jennings to set up town halls and forums, etc. But I think in the long run, the information provided, everyone is not to say excited about doing the work because, that was a lot of work, but I think that they know that it is beneficial in the long run.
If we stayed true to the contract so far in terms of any type of change orders or really a big shift from what was originally agreed upon?
So we have not had any big shifts. So we have pretty much stayed true to it. However, in the last meeting I had with them, there was a question about whether, we have focused on the compensation policies in HR, but the question was whether we should expand the scope of work to look at all policies, including gaps in policies. So if there are policies that we don't have that really we should have, which would be compliance issues, et cetera, that we should take a look at those, and Huron could help us drawing on that and getting that moving forward because of the age of our policies. So I brought that forward to leadership, and they feel that it would be a good idea. So that my next step, obviously, is to determine what that expanded scope would mean in terms of the amount of money that we've set aside.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Regent Green?
Are we looking at potentially making any changes mid-fiscal year, or will anything that is decided upon be the next fiscal year at the soonest? What are our college budget officers looking at in terms of planning?
So I can't really speak to what the budget officers are planning. I would need some assistance from Buddy on that. But I will say that what will happen is that the board, in conjunction with the PLT, will determine, will look at all of the recommendations. They will then determine the priorities, and then the priorities will be given a time frame. So that said, that may mean that some of these changes will take place on a rolling basis and not necessarily at the next fiscal year. Now, given that, then the question is, do you prioritize that kind of change that will not require a huge fiscal layout and then reserve those big ones for the time that the new budgets are planned? Or do you simply say, we're going to set aside an X amount of money in this fiscal budgeting time and determine that that will be set aside for Huron changes? That's a business procedure that I really wouldn't be able to speak to, but I don't believe that everything will wait till next fiscal year. Regent Martin?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to make sure that we plan out, prioritize, do the things that we can do with our current resources, and go ahead and start doing some of those once the dust has settled. But in the same token, we got to have a plan to follow through with the results of this, because part of the results show that we have a hard time following through with things that we start. And I think this is a good place where we prioritize and we start getting some things done. And if it sounds good, but it's something that we feel like we have to put it on the back burner, let's be upfront, put it on the back burner and keep it there, but not expect our presidents, our staff, our systems center to have all of this on their plate at the same time, because it's coming out. I mean, we've already hearing that ourselves through the grapevine. Now Huron is expanded on that as well. I really think that we got to take stock in that and act wisely with it.
Right, and I don't know, and this will be from a personal standpoint, you know, if you keep talking to a friend and say, hey, we should have lunch sometime. Unless you actually calendar that, it's not going to happen. So what I think will happen, and talking with Huron, is that they will come together with the board. They will talk about the recommendations. They will then also talk with the PLT about the recommendations. And then together with the PLT, you'll prioritize those. And for those things, as you said, Regent Martin, that need to go on the back burner, you will put ticklers or timeframes to bring those back up and to ensure that they are not lost in, we'll do that another day. We should have, we should do this someday. So everything you decide is a priority should have a time frame for implementation or reconsideration. Regent Finan?
Another comment, when you look through the internal audit report that was sent out as part of the financial package for later this week, I would hope that some of those needs, some of those findings are tied into the Huron report. To Barry's point, I think there are some things that if we do immediately, we can, show momentum. And if there's things that are being identified through an internal process already, I think that can help us in many different ways. So I would hope that these types of things are being tied together when we make our decision.
That is an excellent comment. I think far too many times, and even Huron has certain work streams, but you need to, as a board, remember that all of those work streams are related. Mm-hmm. We are an institution made up of a lot of different parts, but those parts make up the whole, and we've got to look at it holistically. Any other questions about Huron?
Gotcha.
Regent Jackson?
Thank you, Pam. I just had a comment, I guess, and a question. I really appreciate Regent Green's comment earlier about the faculty data. And my hope would be, as we move forward, that we would have maybe a little bit more background on the process that was followed to actually create that chart. I don't think we should miss the point that she made as far as being able to look at outliers. For example, if you have a college and you have faculty who have been there, I think Regent Fletcher also mentioned this, you have colleges where perhaps faculty have been there a long time, maybe were promoted early, were given the stipend or the uptick for that. And then perhaps during that era of merit pay that we had, I mentioned this really early when we started looking at this, there are faculty who perhaps because of going above and beyond have received merit that at the time was a recurring allocation to their salary, which bumped that person up. And what that does, if we're not really careful, is we have two faculty who perhaps started at the same time at the same salary. One is actually ahead of the other faculty at this point, but it's not really because of a simple raise. It really was a merit for that particular faculty. So I've said that from the beginning, and I hope at some point we can sort of ferry that out to be able to tell what the base salary is that we're talking about and working with, and then perhaps what the merit acquisition was for that faculty. Because what I don't want to see happen, if you have a faculty, let's say they started at 30,000 10 years ago, one of them received merit and is now at 40,000. I don't want to look at those two faculty and say, I need to bring the 30 up, but I need to leave the 40 alone because they already make 40, when that was really a merit acquisition. So, because I think that's really disheartening for faculty who have gone above and beyond, staff too. Of course, I'm not representing staff here today, but definitely appreciate them in this conversation, because what can happen then is it skews the data. You have someone who perhaps is an outlier, but there may be a really good reason why that is. And I couldn't really see that through the chart that was presented. So I don't know if we're going to be able to see that or not.
So just to clarify and go back to what Calcadon was saying, those are market, that's market analysis. Now what they will do is to take the market analysis and apply it to individual cases. So that's where the outliers fall into place and into play. And so all of those individuals that maybe for equity reasons or other types of reasons that are somehow outside the bell curve or somehow skew way out of the graph, they will be looking at those and looking at individual circumstances. When we first began this process, I sent them all of the statutes that were relevant to us, talked to them at length about our history and our personnel systems. So they have that information, but what they have been doing is the data collection from the system, the market analysis, and now begins the hard work of putting it together specifically for individual circumstances, as well as college circumstances, as well as, just everything. So the really minute work starts now.
I appreciate that, Pam. And again, I wanted to assure that because, if you have colleges that are really heavy laden, perhaps in hard to fill positions. So those faculty, may have been hired in at a higher salary because we have the program. We don't have a way to recruit people without the pay, particularly when in corporate America, they make more money. So again, it just skews the data. And I'm really interested in seeing when that is drilled down, what that really, really looks like in comparison to the actual landscape of the particular college and the faculty that are hired therein, based on their salary. So I just really appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Sure. And one more comment on that. One of the latest additions to their work. So I guess I would go back to what Regent Finan said. It's not so much a change or an expansion, but an inclusion of some more analysis will be the technical versus the gen ed and how all of that plays together in performance-based funding and in our funding for colleges and system-wide. So all of that is part of their study and their analysis. I'm not sure who was next, Regent Fletcher or Regent Martin.
I'll jump in there, Barry. Thank you. So just as they're talking about for the faculty and kind of detailing that a little more, I would assume the same thing's going to happen on the staff side. Because of the way it's grouped, you know, just very generically, I would think, like, for instance, Regent Heerdink in IT probably is grouped in staff along with people who are maybe clerical or janitorial or, you know, lots
So
of
they-
other.
Right. So they have grouped, actually. So they've grouped it. I'm going to be showing that I do way too much internet shopping. But when they will come down and you have a drop down menu and they will say, what field are you in? Or, you know, how do you classify X, Y, or Z? So they have actually taken our major staff groupings and put them together in. So there might be administrative, or there might be legal and professional, or there might be academic support. So they are actually putting them into groupings of major types of fields. And then from there, they will break down into the bands and other analysis.
And so then those same market analyses will be applied, like you said, at those individual cases to see with each person whether or not they need to come up or perhaps come down.
Correct.
Okay. So to Patsy's point, I think it's important that we do know the history of those positions, but at the same time, be very transparent in people understanding this could go up or down from where they currently are.
Well, if you're talking about up or down compensation wise, I'm not making any promises, but it is unlikely that we would go to Hannah and say, I'm sorry, we're going to take away $20,000. But what they might say is this classing in this group of individuals, this should actually be a band lower than it is, or this person should be reclassified to be a band higher or a band lower. So that's what they would likely do.
The other thing that I did not see in this data, and maybe this was just not the right place for it, is I think I kind of expected to hear how many unfilled positions do we have right now? Do you have that data, or have they shared anything along that line of how many unfilled positions currently we have and where those fall in the groupings?
I am not sure, but I will check on that, Regent Fletcher. I haven't seen it, but it doesn't mean it's there because there is a lot coming through.
So just for fun, I will mention that LinkedIn sent me a notice today because I follow KCTCS on LinkedIn that LinkedIn recognizes 71 unfilled positions within the system right now.
And that may be the case. I don't know. And whether those are vacancies that we have decided we don't need but might need, or whether they, what that means, whether they were posted at some time and didn't find an appropriate candidate. I would hate to speculate on that, but I will get with HR and find that data for you, or see if Huron has it.
I would think that would be an important part for them to evaluate. If we have 71 positions, how many of those do we perhaps not need?
Right. And that would be part of that policy analysis. There should always be a constant review of vacant positions to determine whether those positions should be changed to something else that is a need in a college or the system office, or whether they could just be done away with.
Thank you.
Regent Fletcher, this is Regent Witten. If you look in the board materials under VP Hillis's report, you will see the current vacancies of faculty and staff as of this week.
Regent Martin.
Yes.
Thank you, Regent Witten.
I think it's key for us to use like Regent Green to make sure that things like this are happening at the local level. And, you know, Regent Green, please keep us abreast of that, because it's very important for us to know that what we're asking for to happen is actually happening at the college level. And you're engaged in it, and you know what's going on. That's your daily operation. So if the market analysis is not being performed, or if positions are being filled frivolously, you know, you need to let us know that. And if you know of that and other colleges or hear of it, so we can kind of pin that down. If you don't mind.
All right. Any other questions on Huron? And I am more than happy to answer any questions that come up later. If you think of something, just email me and I'll be happy to email the answer out to the board. Regent Green calls me, Regent Herding. So pick up the phone and give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you about Huron or anything else.
Any other questions? Hannah, would you once again remind us about how the agenda has changed? I heard the word changed, and I went blank since then. So take it, do it again. Remind us and send it out to everybody, please.
Agenda for Thursday and Friday. This agenda remains the same. We will be going into a closed session to talk about the interim search. And so if we want to, Chair Stevens, maybe take a 5-minute break so we can stop live streaming.
Yes.
We will need a motion to go into closed session, and then we'll take a 5-minute break. If you're a board member, come back after 5 minutes and we'll go into closed session. And if you are not a board member, you will have to disconnect at this time. And of course, we'll stop live streaming and we'll make sure that it's only board members on our Teams call.
Yeah, hear a motion, we adjourn
So moved.
this meeting, the Huron meeting.
Okay,
Second.
so it's all one meeting,
Yeah.
so we don't need a motion necessarily to adjourn, but we're gonna take a
5-minute break. Yes, ma'am.
And when we come back, we'll do a motion to go into closed session.
Thank you, ma'am. 5-minute break.
James, think what you want to talk about.
Thank you for waiting. We're back in open session.
No,
We're not.
They
Thank you for
just-
not
we
waiting.
were talking and they could hear us and we shouldn't be talking.
Yeah.
It's up here.
I see that. We need to put some TVs in this room, head down, so you can see stuff. Cause I can see the roll call vote in KCT Board of Regents, and I see Patsy. I can't read it. Can you read any of that stuff? I had my glasses changed.
Chair, we can hear
We
you.
can still hear.
I just had my glasses changed. I can't see anything.
Okay, we are
Change it back.
we are now live streaming and, if we. can
All right,
have a
we're-
motion
Yep.
To come back in.
Come back in session after being in closed session.
We're back in. Need a motion?
We need a motion to return to.
I
open
need
session.
a motion to go into open session.
I'll make a motion to go into open session, Ms. Berry.
All those in
Is there a second?
second,
Regent Whitten, second.
signify by hands. A roll call vote.
I need a roll call.
Roll call vote. I vote aye.
Chair Stevens, Vice Chair Martin,
Aye.
Secretary Fletcher,
Aye.
Regent Bogard.
Aye.
Has Regent Cox joined? Regent Feynman,
Here.
Regent Girdler,
Aye.
Regent Green,
Aye.
Regent Hamilton,
Aye.
Regent Harding,
Here,
Regent Regent Patsy, Regent Jackson,
Regent Patsy, I'll answer. I'm here.
Regent Rabinowitz, Regent Smith,
Here.
Regent Whitten.
Here.
The vote is unanimous of those members present. We are back in open session.
And I'll ask the parliamentarian to read the motion.
I would like the record to reflect that there was no action taken during closed session. And the motion that the board is now considering is that the KCTCS Board of Regents is declaring that the interim presidential search was unsuccessful. The Board of Regents, having determined the pool was not large enough and candidates did not meet board expectations. The board moves to consider next steps at the March 23-24 board meeting later this week. During the time that the board determines and implements next steps, Dr. Ferguson will continue in the role of acting president. Do I hear a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second,
Second.
Fletcher.
And we will go for a roll call vote. I'm sorry, I've lost my roll sheets. Chair Stevens,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martin,
Aye.
Secretary Fletcher,
Aye.
Regent Bogard,
Aye.
Regent Feynman,
Aye.
Regent Girdler,
Aye.
Regent Green,
Aye.
Regent Hamilton,
Aye.
Regent Harding,
aye.
Regent Jackson,
Aye.
Regent Rabinowitz, Regent Smith,
Aye.
Regent Whitten.
Aye.
Of the members present, the vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion? We adjourn.
So
moved.
moved. Feynman.
So moved.
Second.
Consensus, thank you.
Thank you. See you Thursday.
May I
Thank
ask
you
a
all.
question?
Yes.
Okay, so the board is going to take action on Friday, so that means I don't need to attend?
That is correct, Dr.
Okay.
Whitten.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
If you
Take
have
care,
any
everyone.
input- However, if you have any input, please send it to Hannah and to me, please.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much.